So students, today we'll be taking up the appreciation of the poem that we learnt yesterday, that is Where the Mind is Without Fear by Rabindranath Tagore. Before we go in to the appreciation of the poem, I would like to tell you a bit on the section of the board paper that contains the poetry section. Now, your entire board paper has 5 sections. There are section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, section 5, out of which section 3 is devoted to poetry. Section 3 totally carries 10 marks. Okay, there will be 2 questions in section 3. There will be question 3A, which is basically an extract of one of the 8 poems that you have in your textbook. So there will be a small extract, maybe 2 stanzas or so given to you, based on which you will be asked 3 questions, A1, A2 and A3. So these 3 questions together will carry 5 marks. That means question 3A has 5 marks. Now students, the next question that in section 3, that is 3B, you will be given a complete poem. So again that poem will be again one of the 8 poems that you have in your textbook. In your entire portion, unit 1, from the 4 units, you have totally 8 poems, right? So 3B, which is a part of section 3, will contain a complete poem from the start to the end with the name of the poet, everything, and they will ask you a question, and the question is based on the appreciation of the poem. It's a compulsory question. You cannot omit that question. You have to attempt that question, which means that these 5 marks that you are going to prepare yourself for is extremely important. And you have 8 poems. You read all these appreciation of all these 8 poems over and over again, prepare for them thoroughly, and you will get perfect 5 marks if you attempt them properly. There is no chance of you losing marks if you prepare for the appreciation. I hope you students right now have understood how important the appreciation part of the poem is, right? I will, after telling you about the appreciation, I will give you a write-up of the appreciation as an example. So whenever we take up poems the next time, I will discuss the appreciation, but you will have to attempt it on your own the next. We will help you out with that later on, but it's better that you prepare and get a practice of preparing the appreciation of the poem. Now students, the question appears this way. You will be given the entire poem as it is in the textbook. Then they will ask you, read the following poem and write an appreciation of it based on the given points. Now the given points, students, would be like this. They will give you 4 points, right? The poem and the poet. So point number 1, the name of the poem and the poet. Point 2, the rhyming scheme. Point 3, the figure of speech. Point 4, the central idea or the theme of the poem. You could also be asked in place of any one. Central idea and theme is a compulsory question, but in place of maybe rhyming scheme, they could ask you your favorite line in the poem and why that line which you feel is favorite, why according to you is that line your favorite line. Again, I will write down the points in your assignment when I'm giving you how they expect you to write the appreciation of the poem. The appreciation is to be written in a paragraph format, but containing all the points that they have asked you to include. So your paragraph on the appreciation is going to contain all those 4 points or 5 points for they ask you, and this appreciation will have 5 marks, right? So now we will discuss the appreciation of the poem Where the Mind is Without Fear, based on the 5 points, right? So students, now I will read out the appreciation which I have prepared in terms of the points that have been asked in the paper. Points: first you will write the name of the poem and the name of the poet of that poem, and then the remaining points can be written in any sequence. It does not matter as long as your paragraph of appreciation contains all the points, right? So I have prepared an appreciation which I am reading out to you right now. The poem Where the Mind is Without Fear by Rabindranath Tagore is a prayer to God. Tagore addresses God as my father and asks him to awaken his countrymen into a heaven of freedom, where there is total freedom of good thoughts, good words, and good actions. So students, now in these first 2 paragraphs I have covered up basically the main point, that is the name of the poem and the poet, with a brief description of what this poem is trying to convey. Now ahead I go to it. He wishes for a country where people would be free from fear, where knowledge would be free to all individuals and people from all caste, and religions should be united. Now we come to the rhyming scheme. After having read the poem, you would understand what the rhyming scheme is, right? Now, with respect to the rhyming scheme, I have written the poem is written in free verse. Now, besides free verse, there will be different types of rhyming schemes which you will be taught when we are teaching you how to answer activities on poem during regular classes. So right now for you, the poem is written in free verse without any rhyme. So this answers the point on the rhyming scheme. Then there are many figures of speech used in this poem very effectively. One of the most striking features of the figure of speech is personification, where tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection. Here, this figure of speech, which is personification, we can actually visualize tireless striving stretching its arm to reach towards its goal or perfection. So this is a very beautiful figure of speech. Tireless striving has been very beautifully personified as stretching out its arms, reaching towards perfection, right? Then my favorite line of the poem is where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. I like this line because there is a positive emotion in this line, and it shows dignity and self-respect. Then the poem is very simple, deeply sensitive, fresh and beautiful. So students, in this discussion I have covered up, if you have noticed in the beginning I said that the poet, this is a poem Where the Mind is Without Fear by Rabindranath Tagore. Then I mentioned a paragraph which gives you a central idea or theme of what the poem exactly is about. The poem is about Rabindranath Tagore praying to God Almighty, who he is referring to as his father. He prays to him seeking a wish for his country. Thereafter, in the subsequent discussion, I mentioned the rhyming scheme. After the rhyming scheme, I told you which is the favorite line. So all the points asked in the question have been effectively covered. The same what I am discussing right now, I will write down how, I will guide you how an appreciation has to be written how the question appears and how the question has to be answered in a paragraph format is what I will be sending you across. So you can take that as a reference and then develop your own appreciation of poems. For the next poem which we will be taking up, All the World's a Stage, so you can use the same idea that I will be sending you across to develop your own appreciation. Thanks, goodbye, and take care.